Welcome back. Today we're looking at something pretty significant, especially if you're tracking global policy or, say, international relations for exams like UPSC. The UK Labour Party has put out proposals for some big changes to immigration.
Absolutely. And these aren't just tweaks. They represent a potential shift in the UK's approach, impacting who comes, what skills they need, and how long they might stay.
Right, so we're going to dive into this. The main goal seems to be cutting net migration numbers.
That's the headline. Yeah.
We've got Labour's policy document and some really good reporting from the Indian Express to work from.
Which is helpful because it gives us specifics and also context on the potential impact, particularly, for people from India.
Exactly. So our mission today is pretty clear. Unpack these proposals, look at the reasons Labor's giving, and think about what it could all mean.
And you'll see it touches a lot of different areas: skilled workers, social care, students, even families, and settling long-term. It's quite wide-ranging.
Okay, let's start with the skilled worker visa. Big change proposed here, right? Raising the skill level needed.
That's right. They want to shift it from needing essentially qualifications like A levels, that's senior secondary level LEC, up to requiring a degree level qualification for that main skilled worker visa route.
Okay, so moving from pre-university level to university level. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, the argument Labor is making is that the previous government lowered the bar back in 2020, and they say this led to a really sharp increase in work visas being issued, but with more people coming into jobs they classify as lower skilled.
And the numbers do show a big jump. The document points out work visas nearly doubled between 2019 and 2024.
Yeah, a significant rise. And Labor's analysis suggests this wasn't all, high-tech or traditionally high-skilled roles. So this move to require a degree is central to their idea of sort of recalibrating who comes in through the work visa route.
Recalibrating. Though requiring a degree might exclude skilled tradespeople, perhaps. People with vocational skills, but maybe not a traditional degree.
That's a very valid point. It could definitely impact sectors that rely on experienced workers whose expertise isn't necessarily academic. Businesses might struggle there.
Something to watch. Okay, moving on. Another major proposal is ending the specific visa route for social care workers, the health and care visa.
Yes, specifically for the adult social care and home care worker roles. This route was introduced fairly recently, early 2022.
Right, that was largely post-COVID, wasn't it?
Okay.
Addressing those huge staffing shortages in the care sector.
Exactly. It was designed to make it easier to recruit care workers from overseas because the need was so critical.
And it seems to have worked, at least in terms of visa numbers. The Home Office data shows a big spike in those health and care workers' visas, peaking in 2023.
A very sharp increase. And if you look at who received these visas, it's quite interesting from a demographic perspective. A large number came from South Asian countries: India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and also from Sub-Saharan Africa. Zimbabwe, Ghana, Nigeria were prominent.
I see. So closing that specific route would directly hit people from those regions looking for work in UK social care.
It seems highly likely, yes. It targets a very specific pathway that has been heavily used by nationals from those countries.
Okay, let's shift gears to students. Changes proposed for the graduate visa, too.
Yes, this is about the time international students get to stay and work in the UK after finishing their studies. Right now, it's generally 2 years 3 for PhDs under the graduate visa route launched in 2021. The proposal is to cut that down
Cut it down. To how long?
to 18 months, so reducing that post-study work window.
And why the change? What's the
Yeah.
concern there?
It seems linked to a couple of things. One, a concern that maybe more students are staying on longer term after studying. And two, maybe a perception that more visas are going to students attending what the government might see as lower-ranking institutions.
So the idea is maybe the graduate visa is becoming less about getting initial experience and more a route to staying longer.
That seems to be the underlying worry, yes. That shortening it might push graduates to either leave sooner or find a sponsored skilled worker job faster.
But could that backfire? Make the UK less attractive to top global talent if they have less time to find their feet after graduation?
That's the potential downside, absolutely. It's a balancing act, attracting talent versus controlling numbers and pathways to settlement.
Right. Okay. Another change. Language tests for dependents.
Yes. So currently, the main visa applicant often needs to prove English proficiency. This proposal would extend that requirement to dependents, like spouses.
And the reason given is social integration.
That's the stated rationale, yeah. helping families integrate better into UK society by ensuring dependents also have a certain level of English.
Makes kind of sense. And finally, on the specific measures, a longer wait for settlement.
Correct. Settlement, or indefinite leave to remain, is the step before you can apply for citizenship. Currently, the typical minimum time you need to live in the UK legally is 5 years. The proposal is to double that.
Double it to 10 years.
To 10 years, yes. That would significantly extend the time someone is on temporary visas before they can apply for permanent status. A much longer pathway.
Wow, okay. So we've got the what's, now the why. The documents talk about needing to control migration and explosion in numbers. What's driving this?
Well, there's definitely a narrative about managing the overall numbers, concerns about unsustainably high levels, putting pressure on public services, healthcare, schools, housing.
That's a common theme in immigration debates globally, isn't it? Balancing intake with infrastructure capacity, something relevant for many countries, including India, obviously.
Very much so. And linked to that is the argument we touched on earlier that the type of migration has shifted. The claim is it's moved more towards lower school jobs, especially with that social care visa influx.
And the Prime Minister, Starmer, has talked about this too, hasn't he? About the economy being addicted to importing cheap labor.
Yes, he's framed it as needing to invest more in domestic skills rather than relying on overseas workers for certain roles. He's also mentioned potential impacts on young people's opportunities and local colleges.
So it's framed economically as well as in terms of numbers. And, well, we can't ignore the politics, can we? The rise of parties like Reform UK pushing hard on immigration.
That's almost certainly a factor. Public opinion and pressure from parties focusing heavily on reducing immigration often influence the policy direction of the main parties. It's a classic political dynamic.
Definitely. Okay, let's focus now on the impact for Indians, because the numbers there have been really significant. The Indian Express highlighted this. Indian students going to the UK just soared, didn't they?
Absolutely exploded. From about 10,000 in 2015 to nearly 140,000, 1.39 lakh in 2022. Huge growth. For a couple of years there, India was the top country for UK study visas, though China edged ahead slightly in 2024 numbers.
And we already saw a change this year, didn't we? Restricting dependence for most students. Only postgrad research students can bring family now.
Right, so the rules were already tightening for students even before these latest labor proposals. That's important context.
And what about work visas for Indians?
Similar story initially. Numbers doubled between 2015 and 2023. Indian nationals made up around 22% of all UK work visas in 2023. But interestingly, there was a drop in 2024.
A drop. Any reason suggested for that?
The Home Office mentioned increased scrutiny of employers, particularly in that health and social care sector we discussed. So perhaps tighter enforcement was already having an effect on numbers before these new policy proposals?
Right. And most Indians on work visas are in which category?
The data shows the vast majority, about 70% in 2024, fall under the general worker route. That covers the skilled worker visa and the health and care visa combined.
Okay, so when you put all these proposed changes together, the higher skill threshold, ending the main care visa route, the shorter graduate visa, language test for dependents, the 10-year settlement track, it really looks like it could significantly change the landscape for Indians looking to study or work in the UK.
It absolutely could. The cumulative effect of these changes, if they're all implemented, would likely make the pathways more restrictive and take longer. Anyone considering the UK route will need to pay very close attention to how this develops.
So wrapping up our deep dive today, we've looked at these proposed UK immigration reforms from labor. Key theme: reduce net migration. The methods: raising skill levels, ending the care worker visa, shortening the graduate visa, adding dependent requirements, and lengthening the path to settlement.
And the reasons given range from controlling overall numbers and easing pressure on services to reshaping the economy away from relying on lower-paid migrant labor.
And as we've seen, the potential impact, particularly for people from countries like India, which have seen huge numbers using these routes recently, could be really substantial.
It's definitely a space to watch closely, especially for students and professionals planning their futures.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listeners. In this connected world, how do nations really strike that balance between their own economic needs, integrating newcomers, and managing the global flow of people seeking opportunities? It's a tough question with no simple answer. We hope this discussion was useful. Please do like and subscribe if you found it valuable, and drop any questions or comments below.
We've based today's discussion on the Labour Party's policy proposals and reporting from the Indian Express. Thanks for joining us.